I think it's a great story, and it's a great story that captures your attention, that can be purely for entertainment, education, a combination of both, and help you walk in somebody else's shoes and see life a little differently.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, comics, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and today joining me is a very special guest, my mom, Susan Hahn.
Hello.
Mom. So, welcome to my show. My parents are visiting in Taiwan, and as I have said on many shows, it was our talks and sometimes you sitting down to watch the shows that myself and my siblings were watching and the commentary that came out of that inspired this show largely. So I thought it would be fun to ask you and Dad some of your picks for what you would consider tales of our time or meaningful tales. So thanks for joining me on your vacation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delight to be here.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything you want to say to introduce yourself?
I am Susan Hahn, come from Washington State, and I'm really excited to be in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite genres of books or stories?
Well, sometimes I think it's easier for me to say what aren't my favorite genres. And I
do that then.
I do not like romance, and I do not like horror.
Yeah.
And so if I actually accidentally get one, I just want to, like a romance, I want to take that book and throw it across the room.
Well, Mom, because if it's a romance, you have to be able to be saved by someone.
Oh.
So, okay, here. Let's talk about what book have you brought for us today?
I brought today Lessons in Chemistry.
And that's by Bonnie Garmus?
Bonnie Garmus, yes.
Mm.
And this is a book, I read it this year. I haven't read it recently, but it's just a book that I really enjoyed. It's a fun book. It's a great summer read.
Yeah.
And
you described it earlier as like a beach read.
It is a beach read.
Yeah.
For me. I thought it was a beach read.
I think it's great. The very first book I had on my show was a beach read. Mm-hmm. So I think those are easy to pick up books, and it doesn't necessarily define their worth in terms of what it has to say. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe let's just get into it. Can you give us a summary? What happens in Lessons in Chemistry?
Well, it's about a woman in the early 60s who's brilliant. And she's not conforming in terms of, in the 60s, for a woman to be conforming, you would go to college to find somebody to marry them, and have kids and stay home.
Get your MRS degree.
Get your MRS degree.
Yeah.
And instead, she has no interest in that whatsoever, but she loves chemistry, and she's brilliant. Mm-hmm. And so she goes to school and works her way through to chemistry, gets a master's degree in chemistry, and actually applies to get a PhD in chemistry, and is thwarted when the person who actually has to recommend her to the PhD program makes a pass at her.
Ugh.
And so the only way she's going to get into this program is if she acquiesces. Well, she walks away. Mm-hmm. And she gets a job in a chemical research facility. However, she's completely underemployed. She is like a research assistant, but she's a brilliant researcher. But because she's a woman, she's asked to go get the coffee. She's not valued.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misogyny in upper management. So you have her kind of pushing against the system. Yeah. And she accidentally runs into a man there. I guess it's somewhat savior. And he...
You don't have to put so much stank on the word. It's
I
okay.
know.
Keep going. It's okay.
I just think it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. Go on.
So anyway, she runs into a noble a Nobel Peace Prize chemist
Yeah.
who happens to be single, who falls in love with her for her mind, and she falls in love with him. He asks her to marry him, and she says, no, but I'll move in with you.
Yeah.
And because of his position, she actually gets to do the research that she wants to do, because the company will do anything to keep him. Well, there's an accident, and he dies.
That's a shame.
It is, and she loses her job. They kind of resent that she was getting some good research done.
Right.
And so she goes home, and of course she finds out she's pregnant.
Of course.
And she sets up her own chem lab in her kitchen. And it's hard, and she does meet friends along the way. But what happens is she has her child. She's a single parent. She's barely getting by.
Yeah.
And then her daughter goes to school, and she never talks down to her daughter. But her daughter goes to school, and she always fixes her this fabulous lunch because she wants it to be nutritional.
Yeah.
And she's a good cook because cooking is chemistry. And her daughter actually gets bullied by another girl. And so they call everybody in the office, both parents, and ask the girl who is a bully, why are you doing this? And she says, well, her dad, who's a single dad, can't cook with her hoot. And she has good food. And I'm just so hungry.
Sure.
I just want to have some food. And so what ends up happening is that the other father tastes the food and said it is good. And the other father happens to be a producer in a TV show. And they're looking for somebody to be a cook in a cooking show. And so the gentleman asks our main character, who's, by the way, her name is Elizabeth Zott. So he asks Elizabeth if she would do the cooking show. Now, she's not at all excited about doing it.
Yeah.
But she's getting hungry. She's running out of money.
Yeah.
So she agrees to do it. She goes in, and the first thing they want to do is put her in a tight dress and heels and walk on out there and be the person you see on the cover of Good Housekeeping. The same niche that they're trying to force all women in.
Yeah.
And she says no. And has her lab coat, her white lab coat on, because she says cooking is chemistry.
Yeah.
And I'm going to teach. She just barrels ahead and does it, much to the consternation of the producer and his boss, mostly his boss. She does the show, and she teaches using chemistry. She does not talk down.
Yeah.
And she's very encouraging to women to be and do what you want to do. And show cuts off. They show it because it's live TV, so they can't do anything about it. It's already out there. And the producer's boss is just livid and wants to just cancel the show. And she's fine with that.
Because she doesn't like their opinions either.
No. And she walks away, and when she knows, they get all these comments, and it's wildly successful. And so they do anything they can, and they bring her back in, and she stays to what she stays true to herself. Wears pants when she's supposed to wear a dress, wears a lab coat, again, uses chemistry as a basis for teaching and cooking as a basis for teaching people. Really encouraging women to be their true self. And it is a wildly successful show. And to wrap it up, it gets to the point where she's kind of done with the show. And through a series of events, she ends up making a new family for herself.
Yeah.
Through her neighbor, through her work, even some of her old connections who we thought were enemies, but
They change their mind or they grow.
Well, they actually face the same hurdles that she did. They both are being pushed down.
Yeah.
And once they recognize their shared traumas, they both build each other up. So she builds this family that everybody builds each other up.
Yeah.
And there's another kind of somewhat hokey events at the end, and she ends up being recognized as a chemist, and she's actually employed back in the chemistry
department
department
facility
of the facility, and it all ends well.
Oh, good.
So that's kind of somewhat hokey, yet by the same token, it's just a really good feel-good story with some absolute laugh out loud moments, which is fun.
Yeah, that's what makes it readable when you're reading about things that are like gunk women, like you can't do it. You got to have a couple of laughs in there so you don't feel too personally attacked.
It does. And I think I think the story resonated with me because I am an older woman. I did not go to work during the 60s.
Yeah.
Instead, I kind of started working in the 80s, the early 80s. And I still felt, as many of my contemporaries did, the discrimination in the workplace as a woman. I worked for a company in food service, actually.
Yeah.
And in that...
So very close to home to you. So when you're talking about this book, it was very close to home.
Very close to home, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
But I worked for a company where men could do certain things, and those things were actually management, and they were driving a truck, and they were doing things that got paid more. And women could not do those jobs.
Were you like gate kept from them, or were you just like you could get in there, but then you'd be pushed out, or was it kind of a mix of the two?
Gate kept.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was top down. And I know that within my contemporaries, there was a big push to try to get into management jobs. When I went to work for actually a Fortune 500 company in accounting, there were just these big bays of accountants, and you would look, and they're filled with women, and on the outside were the managers. 99% of them were men. Actually, all of them were men. When I was there in 86, 87, the company itself, through a government program, was actually pushing to get more women in management. And so they had quotas that they had to meet.
Yeah, kind of like an affirmative action thing.
It was.
Right.
And
sorry.
You know, I've talked to other women who are contemporaries of me at that time. There were dress codes. And there were dress codes for men too.
Yeah.
It's just that the women's dress codes, very much, you had to look
like
a guy.
way. Right.
Yeah. Like you wore pretty much dull suits with a blouse that had a tie on it.
Don't get too colorful. Legally Blonde hasn't come out yet, so you can't. You cannot use it as a basis.
You wouldn't do that. Yeah. You very conforming, and look like the people above you, because they felt comfortable with that.
Well, and to be fair to that exact point, necessarily, like the dress code situation hasn't gotten better. I feel like that's still something that a lot of people, especially like women or female presenting, deal with a lot today.
And here's what I'd say to you. It has gotten better.
Yeah.
Which kind of demonstrates how bad it was. Not necessarily
that it's good now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That it has. Well, and I think in some ways we've reverted a little bit, which makes me very sad.
Well, I mean, if it helps, something that I hear often, which is sometimes cold comfort, but, you know, comfort's there anyway, is that a lot of times, like, it's a rubber banding effect, that the reason there's a lot of pushback is because there was a lot of progress made.
It well could be.
You know? And so, like, anytime that you have a lot of progress and a lot of change, especially in a short period of time, you get a lot of pushback from the people who don't want change. And that can result in kind of a step back. But like you said, even though we might have reverted and that's not good, it's not something to celebrate, it's still not back to where it was in the beginning.
That is true.
Right. And all that is not to like minimize where we are right now. It's not to minimize the problems, but getting back to the book that we were talking about.
Which is a lot more fun.
Right. It's a lot more fun than this. So that is kind of like, that sounds like a lot of the meaning that you personally got out of this book.
For me, I could really relate to it.
Yeah, I guess it is. It sounds like it's a very personal, we made the joke about it, but like, yeah, really close to home kind of story for you. Do you think that is kind of what makes it a good tale of our time? Or do you think that there's more to it that other people might find in that?
I think that that's part of what makes it a tale of our time. Part of the tale is that when you read this, it is very overt.
Yeah.
And there are things in it. Elizabeth Swat as a character is very black and white in many things that she does. But she also recognizes when things are wrong, and she speaks out about it. And it's part of who she is as a person.
Yeah.
And I think that when it's so overt, you can kind of see it, and then it's called out to you. But it also makes you think about the things that aren't as overt.
Yeah.
And lets you walk in those shoes just a little bit. I will also say that it's a book that probably sells more to women than it would to men.
Right.
You know?
To me, the way that you're describing it, and especially when you say like it kind of resonates with you, it's something that might like let you walk in those shoes, reminds me of like when you have an argument in your head in the shower after the fact or before the fact, and you're just thinking about all the things that you would have said. Like, this is what I would have done. And it sounds like this book is kind of a really good like maybe representation of that. Like, well,
It
if I were
is.
in this situation, that's what I would do. That's what I would want to do.
It is.
And especially when it's something systemic, I think there's a lot of pressure. And maybe that's something that everybody can relate to, is when you're trying to fight back against like a big systemic problem, there's a lot more pressure than when it's just like the bully, which is already hard.
It can help empower you.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you read these stories too, it helps give you language.
Yeah.
Some language that you can talk to and help identify what it is that's bothering you or what it is that has happened. Doesn't mean you always remember it,
Right.
But
it's in there somewhere.
Subconsciously, it gives you some language to use and maybe helps you get a little bit of a backbone. Yeah.
So we are out of time too.
Okay.
But if you were to give this book your own one phrase subtitle, what would it be, do you think?
Oh boy, it's
a humdinger.
It is, and I had thought of something and then I forgot it. Yay me.
Maybe something about, fighting the system.
Fulfilling your dreams in spite of the system.
Yeah.
How about that?
Okay. That's pretty good. That's what she did. We have used our own community to come up with an answer to a difficult problem. I set the problem, but that's not important in the conversation. So this has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. And, of course, thank you to my mom, Susan Hahn.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
It has been fun. It's been fun to kind of talk about. It's been fun to learn. I've learned today about you as well, in addition to this book. So that was fun. And we hope that you all enjoyed learning about lessons in chemistry, fulfilling your dream in spite of the system, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.